I love doing this check-in, like one word for how you're feeling in this moment, especially with teachers and also I work a lot with high school kids, because it's kind of, I know we're maybe not a very heterogeneous group and was a lot of excited and stuff, but even anxious, like you get the whole human experience in the room, like someone's sad, someone's happy, someone's tired, someone's energetic, and by the time you finish, one kid's like, I need to change mine. And it's just such a good example of like how we are in the moment changes, so thank you.
So today we're going to cover some very important items about embodied practice and what does that really mean. And we're going to start with what we usually always do, is start with a practice. We're going to talk about why teachers need mindfulness. And all, like we're preaching to the choir here, but it's important for us, I think, to have conversations so that we can share with others, right? So what I find in a lot of our first classes with Mindful Schools is teachers are just trying to grasp the language of mindfulness. We're going to talk about what is embodiment and embodied teaching. And then we're going to talk about some self-care practices for all of us. So this is from Patricia Jennings. And let's all do this right now. So I'd like you to put your things down and just to stand with your feet hip-width apart. And she kind of does a little different. I like to start this. Let's imagine that we're walking into our classroom and we have 5 minutes before the kids are going to enter. So you're thinking, oh, what can I do? Well, your lesson plan is all done. Just say that. And then, but we can take 5 minutes or even 3 and say, okay, I'm going to stand in front of the room and I'm going to feel my feet. So see if you can just anchor the weight of your body in your feet and just notice that it's kind of equal weight, or maybe you're leaning to the right a little bit more than the left, or you're just going to feel the weight of your feet. And then you're going to notice about 2 inches below your navel. So just focus on that spot, 2 inches below, and then 1 inch in. And maybe just notice what's there or what isn't. And then opening your eyes. And we're ready to go. Notice, though, before we sit down, if there are any changes in your body. I think that's a big thing that we don't pay attention enough to, is how did my body change? Did I notice a little lightness? Was there some mildness there? Was the anxiety a little lower because you tuned in? Right? All right, thank you.
I like this practice too because as teachers we're standing so much of our day, and often practice is seated, and so it's helpful to introduce ways that we can practice where we're standing.
It's almost like if you could also cue yourself. So is there something in the room that you could cue to remind yourself? Like if you're a high school teacher, every period, could I just do that practice, right? So what is mindfulness? Who can give me their definition of mindfulness? Just your classic definition. What is mindfulness?
Awareness of this moment and living in this moment, hearing, seeing, smelling, experiencing this moment.
Right.
Because ultimately there isn't. The past is gone and future doesn't really exist, and so we only have this moment, and now that's gone, and now there's this moment.
I often like to think about having a backpack on my back and a backpack on my front. And mindfulness means I take off this backpack that has all the shoulda, woulda, couldas. It's pretty heavy. So I try to put that down. And then the backpack I have on my front is all the future worries and planning. And I can take that off. And whew, I feel really good right here, being with all of you. And we don't want to forget the intentional nurturing positive states of mind. Mindful self-compassion is so, boy, that was life transforming for me. And it's something that I love mindful schools lessons because they integrate mindful heartfulness and kindness, compassion practices throughout the 16-week or 8-week, 16 lessons.
I think this one's you.
Okay, healthy nervous system. All right, so we all know we have an ebb and flow. Dan Siegel talks about the window of tolerance, right? So we all have a natural, my life doesn't go just all smooth. And it has some high arousals and then low arousals. But it stays kind of in that window of tolerance. So I'm okay when I'm there.
As we know though, for teachers, that's not often the way it looks. And I know we're coming from a variety of backgrounds, with many of us working in education. They've actually studied what makes a job stressful and who are the most stressed out professionals in this country. In 2016, Penn State compiled all the research data that looked at stress levels by profession. And guess what was the #1 stressed out profession in the entire country? Teachers. It was teachers and then nurses and then doctors. Self-reported levels, high levels of daily stress. So I don't know if that's reassuring or comforting or terrifying. Probably a little bit of both. If you're, and so I appreciate that comment. Like, so many teachers are a mess. I had one teacher who went through our year-long program a couple years ago described himself as a high-functioning mess. He was just kind of a high-functioning mess as a teacher. So they've studied what makes a job stressful. See if any of these are true about the work you do. Frequent interruptions. It's usually at this point of the teachers, please excuse the interruption. A lack of control, long hours, little recognition, switching tasks, being unable to complete things. Does any of this sound familiar in the work that you do? These are true of any profession or many professions, especially true of teachers. And this last one, caring deeply about the results. Because teaching is all those things, and we're so personally invested in it. And so, again, Patty mentioned the mindful self-compassion. We're spending so much time giving and worrying about little people that we often forget about our own nurturing. So it's a stressful job, and we care so deeply about it. And so our nervous system, instead of being that nice, gentle ebb and flow that Patty showed, is often more this. And so something happens and we go 0 to 60 and we're up, and we might get stuck on. And then when we finally have time to come down, it's not just a relaxation, it's almost like a dissociative state, and we're almost unable to function. And so I see mindfulness practices, in addition to teaching us how to pay attention and all that, as giving us these tools to work with what for many of us is a very dysregulated nervous system. And the research is pretty impressive, I think, in terms of what we're seeing for the impact on kids when teachers practice mindfulness. This is a great study. It was done at Richard Davidson's lab at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They had 2 groups of teachers. Half of them got an 8-week, they called it MBSR-T. It was MBSR modified for teachers. If you actually look up this study, if you just Google Fluke, F-L-O-O-K, she was the lead researcher, and mindfulness, you'll find the study. And this taught me to always read the footnotes, because in the footnotes it has 2 sample lessons that they used with teachers in this MBSR-T program. They found that the teachers, compared to the teachers on the wait list, had reduction in burnout and symptoms of psychological distress. And let's just honor that we're in a profession that routinely causes psychological distress. Improvement in classroom organization and increased effective teaching behaviors, increased self-compassion. They had blind observers, so, which always sounds weird to me, but they didn't know which teachers were getting the mindfulness and which ones weren't. Reported that the kids in the mindfulness teachers, or the teachers who'd been learning mindfulness, they were actually better behaved. There were fewer behavior issues in those classrooms. And these teachers weren't teaching any mindfulness to kids. Just the fact that they had a regulated nervous system and were taking care of themselves, it was having an impact on
Can I tell you my school story from the day? You may not have heard.
Yes,
this.
absolutely.
At Fruitvale School in Oakland, there was a teacher the first year, it was our first year, or it was our second year, we started in February, we did 2 schools the following fall. And this teacher said, this is my last year, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done. And at the end of the year, she stayed. And she said it was because of mindfulness. And then we tried to get Gates grant, and we didn't get it, but I said, they're gonna wanna know what happened with our first schools. So I tipped into Fruitvale very sheepishly, and that teacher was still there 3 years later.
Wow.
And she was not gonna be there, and she absolutely attributed it to mindfulness.
Yeah, and so they found, and with this study, I mean, they were getting physiological markers of stress. They were taking morning cortisol levels. I mean, so it wasn't just self-reports. Like there were physiological changes that were taking place. I don't know if you've ever seen this chart. This was shared with me my first year teaching. It's from UC Santa Cruz. The attitudes of first year, or phases of first year teachers' attitudes towards teaching. I think it's all teachers every year. I'm from Minnesota. I think all Minnesotans go through this cycle. We start the year with anticipation, like, oh my gosh, I have a classroom, I have like pencils, and like it's so exciting. And then we slip into survival. And then about October, November, we're in disillusionment. And like, look at it, it's like October, November, December, January, February. It's like half the year we are apparently in disillusionment. And then this rejuvenation, we reflect and we're like, okay, yeah, I can do it again. And that story you shared about that teacher, like, yeah, we get there. I can't do this. Well, what they found in that study was that the teachers that were in the mindfulness condition were more kind of up here. Like they didn't go through that roller coaster and hit those valleys of despair. They had tools to manage their stress. So we share all of this research kind of as a precursor to why our embodied practice and why our mindfulness practice before we're even doing anything with students, why this is so valuable.
So what does it mean to embody mindfulness? What do you guys think? I know there's words up on the page, but what do you think it means to embody mindfulness?
I'm gonna.
Yes.
So part of what we have, so this is another practice
Oh,
from
this is
Patricia.
our
Yeah,
practice.
did you want to
Okay.
go through that?
Yeah,
or do you
yeah,
want
yeah.
me to-
Yes.
Okay.
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 So, all right. So sorry, I thought it was a different slide. So this is another Patricia Jennings practice. And so if you've been in education, you've heard about wait time and encouraging teachers to use that in the classroom, educationally speaking. For the students with special education needs, as a teacher consultant, I would constantly advise teachers to let the students with language difficulties have a little extra time to process the language auditorily before they respond. So this time, let's just do this. So what I'm going to do is practice what is written up there. So I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to give that wait time. So we're going to notice that. And then I'm going to have you respond to a question. Okay, I really goofed that up, but that's okay. We're going to roll with it. And then so that we can kind of use these practices here in real time, all right? So I'm going to ask the question, what does it mean to embody mindfulness? And I'm going to call on you.
To integrate mindfulness in your daily life.
Okay. So let's just think about that question again. We can actually, in a classroom, we could actually practice with our students that we're not going to reward and emphasize the person who has their hand out first, right? It's not necessarily a quickness, it's have we given ourselves, can we teach the students that they could actually notice their feet on the ground, broaden their awareness of what's going on in their body before responding? And can they notice that they really want to reply? That, oh, I've got the answer, right? Can you notice that and still be with it, right? So I think with mindfulness, there's so many different ways to have it applied to every minute of the school day. It's once the teachers understand what that means and how to do it, then you can apply it continuously.
Can I say something about that?
Absolutely.
That, in and of itself, because they live, and thus we live, in a world of, and so the idea of the Arnold Horseshack, like, ooh, 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 that it just elevates. But if you had the practice of saying, I'm going to ask a question, you're going to think about it for a few seconds, and then I'm going to call on someone, it's helpful for everyone, even if they don't get that it's helpful, because it just,
Right. Well, of course, the teacher's modeling, right?
right,
So
but it
that's-
but it
yeah.
allows them
Yeah.
to think about it, and maybe think about, well, maybe it's more than that. So it's about the learning and not about getting the answer right.
Right. Yeah.
Our team, we have 3 teachers working in the classroom. Our team has decided, because there've been some stressful moments, and a lot of times it's surrounding 1 or 2 children. And we've noticed and talked about our emotional responses. The 3 of us, apart from the children, have talked about it, and how we can integrate our mindfulness and model, because we want the children to take our lessons that we've been teaching them and integrate them into their own school day. We are going to actually begin showing them and verbalizing that now I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to take a deep breath because I'm feeling this. And not really to get into the nitty-gritty and to single a child out, but they feel our stress. So if we can take it down in the moment in front of them, just like we've always showcased our own mistakes and those kind of things, to humble ourselves and make it, this is taking it another level, I think. We're excited about it. Yeah.
I think of just the fact that I misread this in another lifetime, that would have, my central nervous system would have been shot, right? But I just can notice that it's okay to make mistakes and use self-compassion and just embody a mindfulness practice. Allows us to just keep learning and growing. Yeah. Wonderful.
I love that what came through too in this, Patty asked the question and that pause, and everyone pauses, and so many neat answers bubbling up about what embodiment means and examples of it. And so, yeah, that wait time, and we know it's such a good instructional practice, especially as Patty mentioned with special ed kids, but for all of us, and that's kind of our time to practice too. Now we're losing our mindful school.
All right.
Breathe.
Right.
Yeah, so just those ways that we can model and demonstrate mindfulness. So we've been talking a lot at Mindful Schools lately about this concept of embodiment. What does it mean to embody mindfulness? And so we started with our dictionary definition. We sometimes use that phrase, someone is a living embodiment of mindfulness, or she's a living embodiment of kindness. So we often mean it to be someone's actually taking on that form, to be an expression of this quality or feeling. And that's so much of what you 3 were all speaking to, this idea that in our own person, we are modeling mindfulness. And this certainly doesn't mean that we can't ever have a moment of where we lose it, or where we're not this perfect model of mindfulness. But we know that mindfulness, like most anything else we're teaching, is going to be most effectively taught by teachers who themselves embody mindful presence and mindful qualities. And that's why at Mindful Schools, so much of our approach is to start with teachers. And there's often so much of the rush. I get a lot of calls from principals the kids need this. Like, we need to do this to the kids. And the teacher's like, we're fine. We're fine. The kids need this. And it's often the adults aren't fine, and the adults do need this. So we've been talking about what does it mean to embody mindfulness? What are these qualities? So John Kabat-Zinn has a list of 7 qualities of embodied mindfulness. We've kind of tweaked them a bit for what we think are really applicable in the classroom. And this is what we've come up with, that a teacher who's embodying mindfulness embodies non-judgment, that non-judgmental attitude, patience, curiosity, flexibility, acceptance, empathy, responsiveness versus reactivity, and authenticity. You know, what I'm presenting is a representation of who I am. You know, obviously with a skillful level of disclosure for the children that we're working with, but that we're ourselves in the classroom. So how do we do this? We really see mindfulness practice as the way that we can begin to embody these. That it's, we know it's not something we can just read about and then be able to demonstrate. So we've been working on coming up with our definition of embodiment at Mindful Schools. We've defined it this way. It's a dynamic and integrated awareness. So it's something that's constantly shifting and changing, as our bodily experience often is. And we're aware of our inner experience. And so that includes things like emotions and sensations and movements, but also thoughts and biases. So that those judgments that can immediately creep in. This was one thing as I started practicing as a teacher, I started to notice, if I was giving like my amazing lecture on the French Revolution and kids were like kind of checked out, I would start on this like, oh my gosh, they hate me. Like they think I'm a terrible teacher. They hate France. Like what's wrong with these kids? And I could get into this whole cycle that would really pull me out of being present with my teaching. So it's noticing all of those things happening internally as well as our outer experience. So taking in the environment of the classroom, how are students responding? The physical space of the classroom, how the classroom is physically organized, how is that impacting how students are interacting with me and each other? Noticing the individuals around us and how these experiences move through the body. So it's this dynamic, as we talk about this embodied awareness, we're taking that mindfulness into what we're doing throughout our day. And we see embodiment as being kind of on a spectrum. We're not going to be 100% embodied 100% of the time. We're going to have moments where we realize like, whoa, I was totally not here. And as we know in mindfulness, it's always the coming back that's the practice and where the real insight lives. How is this going to support teachers? The more embodied we are, the more physically and mentally present we are in the classroom, we can use this present moment awareness to inform our decisions and choices in real time. So I can be taking in the mood, like maybe I notice that the kids, maybe it's not that they don't like the French Revolution, like maybe it's 1:30 in the afternoon and we had a changed schedule today and maybe we need to move a little bit, what's happening in the room, and maybe I need to make a choice about what I'm doing with my curriculum or with my lesson. We also see embodied teaching as an inclusive practice and as the potential to create more equitable and inclusive classrooms. We can welcome all bodies. We forget so much how much of a bodily activity teaching is and how all these bodies are coming into our classroom, and can we welcome all bodies, the nervous bodies and the calm bodies and the wiggly bodies and the scared bodies, and can we really see all the kids in the classroom? The kid who doesn't say anything in a classroom. One thing I came across in looking at some of the research on embodiment, this idea of someone being a nobody. If we think of the kids in school that are nobody, think if they're a nobody, no one's seeing them. So I think there's this really rich field that we can explore in our embodied presence, and then really noticing the bodies of the young people that are coming into our room. So in that way, it's an inclusive practice. It's also how we create a safe container for students. And if we're acknowledging these judgments and biases that are arising, we can respond to them in the moment skillfully and compassionately. We can recognize that we all have these implicit biases, and we can notice them and how can I work with it instead of judging myself or judging my students. So I'd like to use this analogy that when we can do this, when we can teach in this embodied way, our nervous system, is both a tuning fork and a barometer in the classroom. So a tuning fork, inviting everyone to resonate with us. If we can come in with this presence, and even if we're excited and passionate about what we're teaching, there's still an element of calm about us. I think of all the times I came in, I taught a lot of AP history courses, and I'd come in like, oh my gosh, you guys, we've got so much we got to do today. We got a test on Friday. And it was like, what kind of mood was that setting? So I can be a tuning fork and really, with my presence and my breath, invite kids to resonate with my nervous system state. And my nervous system is also a barometer. It's taking the temperature. It's reading the pressure of the room. And what do I maybe need to respond to? Last thing I'm going to share. So this comes from our colleague Alan Brown, who talks about the human nervous system, or the mammalian nervous system, is a collective nervous system. So if you look at deer in a field, and if one of the deer hears like a stick crack or something, the tail goes up. And then all the other deer, like same thing, all their tails go up. They're all on edge. The one deer like far away didn't even hear the stick, but he saw the tense posture of all the other deer, and now is taking that position. This process of neuroception, I've read, I haven't studied, actually done the research, but I've read it's every quarter of a second. Every quarter of a second, our nervous system is kind of scanning and taking in the body temperature and the breathing rate and the pupil dilation and all these other nervous system cues from the other bodies around us. And so with this collective nervous system, I mean, we have a choice. When I run in and tell the kids about the test, it's like, all these tails just going up, like they are on edge. Or I can come in and kind of set a very different tone. So we say this in Mindful Schools, when we use mindfulness to modulate our body stress response while we're working with kids, we stay within that window of tolerance that Patty referenced, and our nervous system becomes the intervention that helps kids regulate their own nervous systems. This, Kirk Olson describes it as, we are a lending library of neurobiological connectivity. Big phrase you can use. I know. Yeah. I've said this many times. A lending library of neurobiological connectivity that we are lending to our students. They can borrow our nervous system. They can borrow our prefrontal cortex when theirs has gone offline.
And I also think, I've been thinking about this with MTSS, RTI systems within schools, is the teacher's embodiment of mindfulness could actually be a tier 1 intervention, right? And tier 2 could be the classroom teacher teaching mindfulness to the students. I used to always glom teacher practice and the Mindful Schools program as tier 1. But really the embodiment, and that's what I love about Mindful Schools, I'm a super fan, is because you're not just giving teachers a curriculum to teach the kids first. You have to go through and acquire, and then maintain your own personal practice. So I think that's a major thing that we can emphasize in schools, is if nothing else, everyone sign up, 20% discount on our courses. Sign up for Mindful Fundamentals and start your own personal practice.
Can I speak to this again?
Yeah, go ahead.
I taught acting, and we would do warm-ups. And I taught them this Tai Chi-like little tweaks, but it's about breathing and movement. And I would teach them to my acting 1 kids, and they would roll their eyes at me like, what the hell is she? But by, I don't know, December or
Right.
before then, and certainly when I get them in acting 2, acting 3, acting 4, those kids would walk in and they say, are we gonna silk today? Because I need to silk. No, but at first they're rolling their eyes, but then they're coming in, we gotta silk today, we're gonna do that? Because it's called 8 pieces of silk. And so they wanted that to come from the insanity of the halls, right? Because
Yeah.
moving from building to building, and it's just,
That's probably the biggest surprise when I take teachers through the Mindful Schools curriculum, is they're always shocked at how much the kids want it. They're just thinking in their head, oh, it's gonna be really hard to talk them into doing these lessons. No.
no,
They-
I mean, at first, because they have to
Yeah, some
save
of
face
them.
with one
Yeah.
another, like, I'm so cool for school, but then when they actually experience it,
Yeah.
I just think so much is all remembering when we were kids. Human nature is human nature, you know, I mean, and a lot of times you're acting like you're cool, you know, you're not. And you really do want what that teachers give, because you think teachers really do know. I just think there's such a responsibility, particularly working with little ones.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's almost scary because they just think you know everything this lady says is right. That's a huge responsibility.
It is.
And I
agree.
take that extremely seriously. And it's so much of it is just learning to be silent. And for me, the mindfulness. And when and addressing why sometimes I don't want to be silent. You don't want to, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you know, but once you get there, then it's just, it's great.
All right.
I don't know if we're gonna have
boy.
time for the video, but do you wanna walk them through the practice?
Yeah, so this is a great video, and we will be sharing our slides, right?
I think so. I think
Um,
so. It's from the, it's on mindful.org, so I'm sure you can access
Yeah,
the video. It's
yeah.
from, the article's called Why Self-Compassion is Essential for Teachers.
So when we do self-compassion practices, we will start with validating how we are right now. So let's all put our hand on our heart. We're mammals, and so feeling, just touch is so important. And we can just say, this is really hard for me right now. And just being able to validate that this moment is difficult brings that to mind. And then we can use kind words like, may I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Just notice, I just noticed a little shiver in my arms because of that. Just taking that in and embodying those words. And then breathe in compassion for yourself. Breathing in and breathe out compassion for everyone in this room. Just being here now, together, sharing the space. And then opening your eyes. So self-compassion practices involve kindness for yourself. They involve common humanity. And what am I forgetting? Kindness for self.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Thank you. Boy. All right, there was that. So mindfulness is noticing that maybe you even need self-compassion, right? So if I'm lost in thought or in an emotional turmoil, I might not even be able to stop and give myself some kindness, right? So mindfulness. But the common humanity piece is so important too, is just knowing we're all of us suffer in this world. They all have things that have difficulty that we share that commonness.
Yeah, And I love Kristen Neff's embodied approach around self-compassion, just that even that soothing touch, like just placing your hand on your heart or feeling the feet. So in this video clip that's on the mindful.org website, she speaks to this about how we need these practices in the moment. Okay? That we can't go like get our nails done when we're in the classroom. Like we just need a practice for in the moment so that we can stay present while we're working with young people. We wanted to, and we thought we would create, so Megan has created this What Makes a Mindful School little chart. We wanted to create, in the 3 minutes we have left, self-care ideas. We're curious what your go-to self-care ideas are. We've shared a couple examples.
Yeah, we were going to do sticky notes, but
you can
share,
write.
I'll write them down.
Yeah, so we know that there's so much wisdom in what we have to offer as a group. What are things that you found helpful? Kind of those in the moment, I'm teaching and I'm overwhelmed. Here's something I can do for myself that I can nurture and resource myself.
I just remember it was from in the educator part where they talked about, which is really powerful, is about just getting into like our desks in my one room are like this, the other room I'm in front, but just grounding through my feet, just taking a second to like be in the room, especially if I'm feeling agitated or people aren't paying attention, is just to stop and just ground through my feet and get heavy into the earth and then be light from the waist back up and just kind of be open and just stand there for a second and just hold space. And when you do that, it's amazing because everyone just kind of winds down and tunes back to you. So that's just one of the things, like if you're in the middle of the classroom and it's not going the way, just being aware that you're starting to get revved up and my voice starts to get loud and I start to talk faster and I'm starting to catch myself much quicker when I get like that.
I just want to call out how much like noticing there is in that, like how you're noticing these are the things I do when I'm getting to that point, and to notice those, and then this very body-based practice that brings you back. Thank you for sharing that.
One thing to share that I do for both myself and my students, we have a red Dixie cup, and there's popsicle sticks with calming strategies in it. And if a student needs it, they ask for the exercise. We refer to that as an exercise break. Or if I even see that I'm starting to rush and my voice is getting louder, and I'm recognizing that I need it, I initiate it. And it's just a real quick intervention that you can do in 2 minutes and you're back on track.
I also started incorporating, I teach high school, color sheets. So I just have a stack of color sheets. And colored pencils, and kids can grab one when they come in. And I had all these what's it called, mandalas? Mandalas, yeah. I know I was saying it wrong, mandalas. And for Valentine's Day, I brought in all these like preschool, like I just printed them off some online source. These preschool like little puppies and bears, and my kids are starting to ask because they've run out of those, are you gonna get more of those other color sheets? And I'm just like, the puppies and bears? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, sure. So, but they're allowed to just grab that and they can sit and do that while class is going on, just for self-calming.
Yeah, you had.
Yeah, so when I find myself maybe getting a little riled up in class, or just if they're getting out of control and I feel myself getting ready to yell or something like that, I'll stop. And they know when I stop in the middle, like, okay, we're getting to her, So I'll look at them and I say, now what did I tell you when you first came into class? I always start and end my class by saying good morning or good afternoon. I love you. If nobody told you today, I love you. In the same way, when they get ready to leave, I say, now what did I tell you at the beginning of the class? If somebody said that you love us. I say, and you told me you love me back. Is this how you show me that you love me? And they like, you right, Miss H, we sorry. And calm down. So the love works, and they feel it. They know that I'm not just saying I love you. They know that I truly love them.
So we're already over time. So our key takeaways, teaching's hard. And mindfulness and self-compassion support our self-care as we regulate our nervous system. And that regulated nervous system and our embodied presence supports student self-regulation. And we can use this embodied knowing to make those skillful choices as we teach. We have no time for questions or anything. But we will stay around. Okay, we can take questions. If you want to go down to the resource fair, if you want to grab your jacket, sounds like they're like holding your jackets down there before you can go home. So thank you for coming. We have lots of just handouts and information about mindful schools. We've got our mindful room full of places where you can practice or ideas of things that you could bring into your mindfulness room in your school. But Patty and I for sure will stick around and take questions. But I do want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.